Is that stream? Okay, good. We'll send him a message. What's that? Well, you know, what we could do is there are two bills. There are no withdrawals, but there are two bills where we are second. And in two cases, B&T in one case, finance in the other, have already passed bills. So maybe we start with those two. And it's a Simon Ayer bill that has been passed the Budget and Taxation Committee. And we are the mere second. So Devin, tell us what the Budget and Tax Committee did with the Simon Ayer bill.
Senate Bill 278, Tax Relief and Pensions Equality for Service Members Act. As introduced, this bill generally establishes uniform definitions related to the military and the general provisions, local government, state personnel and pensions, tax general, and tax property articles of the Maryland Code, primarily by reference to definitions in the U.S. Code. While numerous alterations within the bill represent only stylistic or technical changes, there are a few substantive changes.
I just interrupt. We are on the first bill, and your timing is ideal, and you've been released. But I know. So it's all good. Okay, back to you, Devin.
These changes, in the substantive changes, generally make certain provisions, including those related to reemployment, reinstatement rights, income tax abatement, and property tax relief, more broadly applicable to additional service members. The bill takes effect July 1, 2025. EEE is secondary on this bill. There are amendments that I provided for you on page 8 of your packet. They strike the pension provisions of the bill. They add similar amendments that this committee passed on Senate Bill 275, the Omnibus Military Bill, and adds all of the members of the Budget and Taxation Committee as co-sponsors.
Senator Simon Ayer, do you have anything to add to this first bill on the voting list?
Yeah, so we struck, there was like 2.5 pages of pensions, and the pension group asked if we could study that over the interim because it's very complex, and I agreed to work with them, so that's fine with that.
So do you want to move the product that came to us from the B&T in its entirety? Second from Senator Washington. Any discussion about Senate Bill 278 from the Budget and Tax Committee? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of Senate Bill 278 as it came to us from the Budget and Tax Committee? Raise your hand. All opposed? That bill carries unanimously. Let's go down to the other bill that came. This one came from the Finance Committee. We're in the 2 spot. Okay. Stacy?
Senate Bill 439, Higher Education, High Impact Economic Development Activities, alterations. As amended by the Finance Committee, this bill alters the definition of high-impact economic development activity to exclude cost savings related to the reduction in the number of University System of Maryland or Morgan State University employees. Additionally, the USM Board of Regents must include the following in its annual report on high-impact economic development activities: the amount of state or USM funds used on each high-impact economic development activity during the preceding year, the net benefit of each high-impact economic development activity, and whether the board believes that each high-impact economic development activity is in the best interest of the state. And those both apply to both Morgan State and University System of Maryland. The bill also repeals the authorization for officials or employees of public higher education institutions to serve as directors, officials, or employees of entities supporting high-impact economic development activities. Finally, it makes these entities subject to state procurement law. The reason they add Morgan State University is because they have these entities called HIDAs, or High Impact Economic Development Activities, as well as the University System of Maryland. This comes, I believe, after a report to the Joint Audit Committee where the University of Maryland Global Campus had some issues with procurement. They lost a lot of money, several $1 million, and upset the Joint Audit Committee. So the Finance Committee has voted this favorable with amendments unanimously.
Okay, any questions for Stacy on this piece of legislation? We're in the 2 spot, Senate Bill 439. Yes, Senator Washington.
So St. Mary's doesn't have any of these activities? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for Stacy? Is there a motion to move favorable on the bill as it came to us? Okay, first favorable from Vice Chair Kagan, second from Augustine. Discussion. All in favor of Senate Bill 439 as the Finance Committee presented it to us? Raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Now let's just go back to the top of the list, Senate Bill 116. Devin?
Senate Bill 116, Data Center Impact Analysis and Report. As introduced, this bill requires the Maryland Department of the Environment, Maryland Energy Administration, and the University of Maryland School of Business, in coordination with the Department of Legislative Services, to conduct an analysis of the likely environmental, energy, and economic impacts of data center development in the state. DLS must synthesize the respective assessments completed by the agencies in the School of Business into a final report and submit that report to the Governor and General Assembly by September 1, 2026. There are two sets of amendments on pages 3 and 4 of your voting packet. The first set of amendments adds a data industry expert as a consultant to the study with the University of Maryland School of Business. The second set of amendments remove MEA from the provisions of the study. With that removal from the study and DLS's additional oversight, B&T is fine with the fiscal note with regard to this bill.
The amendments do take down the fiscal note substantially to the point where Budget and Tax is now comfortable with this analysis. Any discussion or questions for Devin on the amendments? Okay, would anybody like to move those amendments to bring the price tag down? Senator Gallion moves the amendments. Is there a second? From Senator Brooks. All in favor of those amendments, those two sets of amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendment carries. We now have Senate Bill 116 as amended before us. Any questions, discussion, motions? We have a motion favorable from Senator Brooks on the 116 as amended. Is there a second from the Vice Chair? All in favor of Senate Bill 116 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Next, move to April, Senate Bill 186 from Senator Bailey.
Senate Bill 186, Commercial Blue and Flathead Catfish Finfish Trotline License, Prohibited Regulations. As introduced, this bill establishes that regulations adopted by the Department of Natural Resources to govern commercial blue and flathead catfish finfish trotline licenses may not prohibit a licensee from fishing in the main stem of the Chesapeake Bay that is south of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. We have a number of blue catfish bills this year. The House had kind of worked with the department on smooshing those together into one bill that authorizes the department to move forward with a pilot program that is going to be looking at all sorts of different innovative ways to tackle this process. And Senator Bailey has submitted amendments, which are on page 5 of your bill or your voting packet. These amendments are identical to the amendments adopted on the House cross-file. The amendments strike the bill and instead establish an invasive blue catfish pilot program to curb the spread of the invasive blue catfish in the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries. Pilot program consists of a for-hire/commercial blue catfish program, a mid and lower bay blue catfish trot line program, and any other program determined to be affected by the department. The department must authorize the use of finfish trot lines south of the bridge to the maximum extent feasible to harvest blue catfish, subject to specified exceptions. DNR must also consider authorizing the use of electrofishing, the use of trot lines up to 2,400 feet in length. That was part of a bill that we heard from Senator Mouts, and eliminating limits on the number of hooks used on a finfish trot line, as well as authorizing the use of hooks that are not corrodable. Amendments make the bill an emergency measure and terminate the bill on June 30th, 2026.
Okay, any questions about, these are again, the amendments that the House has put on the bill to sort of consolidate things and create a pilot and that kind of thing. Any questions for April? And yeah, we'll start with Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you. Just a quick question, April. Can you just talk about why it's a pilot? Why should it sunset?
So the idea behind this is to sort of allow the department to kind of experiment with sort of different options. There has been reluctance, for example, to expand some of the trot line stuff too much because there is potential to interact negatively with other fisheries. So this kind of gives them some time to play around with this, and then they can figure out what works, what's worth taking forward, what's not.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for April? Does anybody like to move those amendments, those House amendments that we, okay, we've got Senator Carrozza moving those amendments favorable, second from the Vice Chair. All in favor of those amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, those amendments carry unanimously. We now have the legislation in front of us. Which bill, what's the name, what's the number?
186.
Yeah, Senate Bill 186 as amended in front of us. Is there a motion favorable on the bill as amended? Senator Carrozza is favorable, second from the Vice Chair. All in favor of Senate Bill 186 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Let's now move to Senate Bill 309. Devin, Senator Simonaire.
Senate Bill 309, Department of Veterans and Military Families Online Registry. As introduced, this bill requires the Communications Outreach and Advocacy Program in the Department of Veterans and Military Families by December 31 of this year to establish and maintain an online registry to provide information to registered individuals. The Secretary must also include in their annual report specified information relating to the online registry. The bill also alters several definitions relating to the military. There are two sets of amendments offered by the sponsor, beginning on page 11 of your packet. The first set of amendments on page 11 alter the requirements of the online registry to conform with the already established practice of the department as to how they collect veterans information. The second set of amendments, beginning on page 13 of your packet, add service members to the provisions of the bill and otherwise conform the bill to the language that is in the omnibus military bill, Senate Bill 275.
Okay, Senator Simonaire, you want to discuss?
If I can just ask, is this amendment 243-221, ending in 221?
243221. No. The amendments that I have are 683124 and 873328.
Okay.
Were there additional amendments, Senator?
There was a replacement amendment. I thought I got it to you, but I can give it to you, and we're voting tomorrow?
Yeah, let's just hold it, and then you guys can
Yeah,
figure it
fine.
out. And by the way, on that front, so tomorrow, we have no bill hearing, so tomorrow, we just have this 1 o'clock, joint hearing room, ECM hearing, if you will, with, on the utility rate increases. If we've got a, decent critical mass of some more bills, then we can come back here after the 1 o'clock briefing and come back here and do some more voting. I'm not saying we're definitely going to do it. Thursday, we are also free. We have a very short few number of bills, so we've got opportunities here. So why don't you let's hold the bill, you guys work on it. And now let's go to Senate Bill 313 from Senator Mary Washington. Stacy, Senate Bill 313.
313, election law, post-election tabulation audits, risk-limiting audits. This bill requires the State Board of Elections, in collaboration with the local boards of elections, to conduct a specified risk-limiting audit following each statewide election. In addition, the bill authorizes risk-limiting audits following special general elections, modifies an automated software audit requirement so that it is instead an authorization, and repeals an existing requirement to conduct a specified manual audit following each statewide general election. There is one amendment. It's in page 17 of your packet, and the reprint begins on page 19. This is offered by Senator Washington. This amendment would strike the requirement that an RLA be conducted of a local contest. It clarifies the requirements for conducting a risk-limiting audit, including when it must be completed. It clarifies the procedures for when a risk-limiting audit finds that the results of a particular contest may be inaccurate, and it authorizes a local board to conduct a risk-limiting audit of a local contest at its discretion.
Does the House move the bill? I know this was,
They did, but they put no amendments on
they
it.
put no amendments, okay. Okay, Senator Washington, on your amendment, so this will put us a little out of kilter with the House product, but
Well,
that's fine,
I
but
mean, yeah.
maybe just, do you want to add anything to what Stacy said about the amendment?
The amendments adjust concerns expressed by a number of, the state board, our local boards, and I believe they're consistent with the intent of the bill, and I would move the adoption of the amendments. I think they're good, they make sense.
Second from Senator Gallion. Any further discussion about this amendment? Okay, all in favor of the Washington amendment to the Washington bill, raise your hand. All opposed, that amendment carries unanimously. Senator Washington, you want to move the bill? As amended?
As amended.
Okay, Senator Washington moves the bill, Vice Chair seconds the bill. Any questions, discussions? All in favor, Senate Bill 313 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. April, let's go back to another Bailey bill here, Senate Bill 335.
Yeah, and I apologize. I actually missed an amendment that should be in the voting packet. Is that right if I verbally explain it?
Sure.
All right, so Senate Bill 335, Natural Resources, Canada Geese, Bag Limits. Bill establishes during the migratory Canada goose Atlantic population hunting season, the bag limit for all Canada geese in the state, including geese found in the Atlantic Flyway Resident Population Hunt Zone and the Atlantic Population Hunt Zone, must conform to the bag limit for the Atlantic population Canada geese adopted annually by the Department of the Interior's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. I neglected to include, there is an amendment from Senator Bailey that would provide that the bill does not apply in Allegheny County, Frederick County, Garrett County, Washington County, or the portion of Carroll County geographically west of Route 31 and Route 97. What this bill is trying to get at, right now we have, there is a season for the Atlantic population of geese, which they're a migratory species, they're federally managed. Currently the bag limit is 1 per day. And then there's a season for our resident population, which are the geese that stay here year round. They're frankly overpopulated. That bag limit is 5 per day. There is an area of the state where both of these geese kind of exist at the same time around the Chesapeake Bay, where Senator Bailey's contention is that it is very difficult to tell whether it's impossible to tell whether you're shooting resident geese, a goose, or a migratory goose. The amendment is carving out areas of the state that are further west where it really is just resident geese. So the intention is to say that in this part of the state where the migratory geese are more likely to be flying through, and during the migratory season, that the bag limit would be one goose per day.
Right, so you've just got a mapping overlap, kind of an odd situation here, and trying to reconcile that. Questions on the amendment or on the underlying bill? Okay, anybody want to move the amendment?
I moved the amendment, and interestingly, I learned about this on a plane sitting on a way to a conference, sitting next to someone who's an advocate and a tracker of all these, and I didn't realize it was an issue, and it clearly is, and I move the amendments, and I'll endorse the bill.
Okay, is there a second on the amendment? Senator Gallion. All in favor of the Bailey amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? Senator Washington would like to move the bill as amended?
One
do you wanna-
more,
Oh.
Senator Mouts requested to be added as a co-sponsor.
Okay.
Senator Washington, you may add it too.
Okay, before we, we'll take a sponsor, anybody else beyond, other than Senator Mouts? Yeah, I thought, so the guy on the plane didn't make that much of an impression. So, okay, we've got a Mouts amendment. Anybody else want to be on this piece of legislation? Okay, all in favor of a sponsor amendment that has Senator Johnny Mouts on there, raise your hand. All opposed, that sponsor amendment carries. Now, Senator Washington, would you like to move the bill with those two amendments? Okay, we have Senator Washington moves the bill as amended, Senator Augustine second. All in favor of Senate Bill 335 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries unanimously. Let's go to Senator Sidnor, Senate Bill 342, the Voting Rights Act.
Mr. Chair, this needs to be held.
Okay, we're going to hold Senate Bill 342. And we're going to move back to one more Bailey bill, Senate Bill 363, April.
Senate Bill 363, Maryland Agricultural and Resource-Based Industry Development Corporation Oyster Shucking House Loan Program. This bill increases the amount from $10,000 to $25,000 that the Maryland Agricultural and Resource-Based Industry Development Corporation, or MARBIDCO, may loan per seasonal full-time job projected to be created or retained under the Maryland Oyster Shucking House Loan Fund. Bill also reduces the number of years from 5 to 3 that a person may have been a licensed seafood dealer in order to be eligible for loans under the program. There are no amendments.
Okay, there are no amendments on this bill. Any questions for April on Senate Bill 363? There's no amendment. We've got, Senator Washington has a question.
What is MARBIDCO?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions for April? Okay. Is there a motion? Somebody. Okay, Senator Gallion moves the bill favorable. Vice Chair moves seconds that. Senate Bill 363 clean with no amendments. Discussion. All in favor of Senate Bill 363, raise your hand. All opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Let's next go to Senator Kramer. Senate Bill 375. This is a bill that did pass out of this committee last year, I believe. Senate Bill 375, April.
Okay. Senate Bill 375, Agriculture Roosters Restriction. This bill prohibits, beginning January 1st, 2027, and with specified exceptions, a person who keeps roosters that are maintained individually and kept movement constrained through the use of an enclosure or tether from keeping more than 5 roosters per acre on a single property, or more than a total of 25 roosters on a single property unless authorized by the Maryland Department of Agriculture. A person who violates this prohibition is guilty of a misdemeanor and on conviction is subject to a fine of up to $1,000 or an injunction as specified. There are amendments in your voting packet. So these amendments, the amendments start on page 26. Reprint starts on page 29. These are the Environment and Transportation amendments to the House cross file, which is HB 513. And Senator Kramer has requested that we at least take a look at these. The amendments move the bill's provisions from the agriculture article to the criminal law article, define enclosure for purposes of the bill, exempt a person who, on request of an animal control officer, officer of a county humane society, or police officer, provide written proof that the person kept more adult hens than roosters within the immediately preceding 6-month period, strikes the bill's penalty provisions and instead makes a violation of the law a civil offense subject to, for a first offense, a warning, for a second offense, a civil penalty of up to $500 per rooster, and for a third or subsequent offense, a civil penalty of up to $1,000 per rooster, and provides for the enforcement of the law by state and local law enforcement, as well as animal control authorities. So it's essentially taking it sort of out of the Department of Agriculture and putting it with animal control.
Let's take some questions. We've got Senator Gallion. But by the way, does Senator Kramer have a position on these amendments, or he's just leaving it up to the committee to, or does anybody know? Jennifer, do you? Okay, just. Okay.
E&T.
Yeah, it came out of E&T. Okay, so Kramer, just for, look, we're not bound by whatever the sponsor says, it's just good to know. Yeah, Senator Gallion.
I was just going to move the amendments.
Okay, Senator Gallion moves these amendments that the E&T committee put on the House. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Senator Watson. Okay, discussion. All in favor of those amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, those amendments carry. We now have Senate Bill 375 as amended before us. Is there a motion? Okay, Senator Hester moves the bill 375 as amended. Second from Senator Watson. All in favor of 375 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Let's go down to Senator Folden, Senate Bill 449. April? Senator Folden, yeah.
Senate Bill 449, Frederick and Washington counties bow hunting, openly carrying handguns. This bill specifies that the Department of Natural Resources may not prohibit a licensed bow hunter from openly carrying a handgun that the hunter is otherwise authorized to carry if the bow hunter is, 1, hunting in Frederick or Washington counties during deer hunting season, and 2, meets specified requirements currently applicable to a bow hunter carrying a handgun while hunting in Deer Management Region A. So this bill would essentially bring Frederick County and the remainder of Washington County in line with the rules applicable to Deer Management Region A, which covers Allegheny and Garrett counties and the western portion of Washington County. There is an amendment request. It's not in your voting packet. It's just a request to change the sponsorship to the Frederick County Senators.
Okay, so it's tantamount to a local Frederick bill trying to align with them with the rest of Western Maryland. Sure, yes, Senator August.
Does that mean that there's a letter from Frederick County?
There is a letter from Frederick County.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, Senator Watson.
Yeah, I just have a question, because all of these animals are new to me. I only have dogs. So when we passed bills related to bow hunting, right? So when someone is going bow hunting, now these folks, if they're authorized, can carry a firearm. Can they use both?
No, so specifically, the rules right now for Region A, which is further Western Maryland, is that the person must be at least 21 years old, hunting for deer and carrying the handgun for personal protection, and may not use the handgun to kill wildlife wounded by a vertical bow or crossbow.
Okay, personal protection. Thank you for that clarification.
Specifically, the concern is bears, yeah.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, so we've got an amendment, that amendment to convert it to a Frederick County Senate delegation bill. We've got Vice Chair Kagan has moved the amendment. Is there a second from Senator Watson? All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, that amendment carries. Senate Bill 449 as amended is in front of us. Is there a motion? Okay, Senator Watson moves the bill as amended. Is there a second? Senator Brooks. All in favor of Senate Bill 449 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Senate Bill 491 is being held, right?
Happen on 4th.
I'm sorry, Senate Bill, that was Senate Bill 449. My apology, but Senate Bill 491, the Guile bill we are holding. Yes, Senator Carrozza.
What, I know we mentioned 439 earlier in the session, but I forgot what happened.
Yeah, that was worth the second. We moved favorable on the Finance Committee product.
Okay, that's, okay,
We're just secondary on that bill.
got it.
Okay, so now let's go to the second page, a bill out of that from the Howard County Senators, Senate Bill 574. Stacy?
Senate Bill 574, Howard County Board of Education, Board Member Terms and Compensation Commission. This bill alters the election process for members of the Howard County Board of Education by staggering board member elections such that by the 2034 election, 2 members elected from the councilmanic districts and 1 member elected from the county at large must be elected in gubernatorial election years, and 3 members elected from councilmanic districts and 1 member elected from the county at large must be elected in presidential election years. The bill also establishes the Howard County Board of Education Compensation Commission, staffed by the Howard County government, to study the salaries of school board members and issue a report to the Howard County Council on or before September 1, 2026, and every 4 years thereafter. The bill authorizes the Howard County Council to, after reviewing the Commission's report, recommend by resolution that members of the Howard County delegation to the General Assembly alter the salary of school board members. There are no amendments, and we have received the local letter.
Okay, Senator Hester?
We have?
We have a local, we have a favorable motion from the Howard and Montgomery County Senator Hester, Senate Bill 574, second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of Senate Bill 574? I'm sorry? You have a question? Okay. All in favor of Senate Bill 574, clean, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries. Let's next go to April, Senate Bill 717 from Senator Carrozza.
Senate Bill 717, Somerset County Salaries of Local Officials Increase. This local bill increases the salaries of certain public officials in Somerset County. Pursuant to constitutional requirements, the salary increases take effect at the beginning of the next terms of office. There are no amendments.
Senator Carrozza? Okay, Senator Carrozza moves favorable, second from Senator Augustine. Discussion. All in favor of the Somerset County Bill 717 clean, raise your hand. All opposed? 717 clean carries unanimously. Senate Bill 718, April.
Senate Bill 718, Somerset County Code of Public Local Laws, 2025 edition, legalization. This local bill legalizes the 2025 edition of the Somerset County Code of Public Local Laws and any supplement to it that contains laws enacted by the General Assembly. There are no amendments.
Senator Carrozza?
Move Senate Bill 718 favorably.
Okay, Senate Bill 718 has been moved favorably by Senator Carrozza, second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of this Somerset County local bill, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 718 carries unanimously. Next up, Senate Bill 783, Stacy.
Senate Bill 783, Public Schools, Student Fights, School Investigation and Discipline. This bill requires a principal or school administration to investigate each student fight or physical struggle and prohibits school employees from disciplining a student who, after the investigation, more likely than not used reasonable force to protect the student or to escape the attack. If a student is disciplined during the course of an investigation but is later determined to have used reasonable force, the principal or school administration must expunge any documentation of the discipline from the student's disciplinary record. There's a last-minute amendment filed by Senator Charles, and that's on your desk. I handed each of you a copy. I don't have a specific thing because it came in just before the voting session, but my quick review of this shows that it's much more prescriptive. It says that a school employee who has been trained to conduct an investigation instead of a principal or a school administration has to conduct the investigation, that the investigation must include witness statements, if applicable, video evidence, and input from all students involved in the physical fight or the struggle. Further, it says, if a student was disciplined during the course of the investigation, the principal or school administration, instead of shall, it says may, based on the investigation under subsection A, expunge the documentation. And then this is new language, if the investigation determines that a student involved in a fight or physical struggle used excessive force, regardless of whether it was reasonable force justified under paragraph 1 of this subsection, the school administration shall document the use of excessive force. School employees shall monitor any student involved in a fight or physical struggle under this section to prevent continued conflict. And it requires each school to require students to attend a de-escalation training and conflict resolution program. So it's much more prescriptive.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if you recall, I mean, the actual underlying bill there was a lot of discussion and conversation, questions, I remember there was. This is much more prescriptive. I mean, investigation's one thing, this is really getting into the minutia. Okay, let's just open it up. Senator Carrozza, just, let's talk about the underlying bill and the amendment.
So I
starting with
first
Senator
wanted
Carrozza.
just to share with my colleagues, I was trying to contact Senator Charles ahead of time just to better understand what was behind the amendment. And I was also concerned about the last section of the amendment, making sure, again, my concern has been about the victims, that last section did not impact the victims. I'm picking up, I have not had a direct conversation, but I'm picking up that Senator Charles was asked by a local elected official to forward the amendment. So I have not had the direct conversation with the senator about it. Just to go back to intent, and I did appreciate during the hearing the exchange that I had with Senator Augustine, really trying to protect victims with this legislation, and also to make sure that the principal has enough flexibility. You all know I support local flexibility, don't want to be prescriptive. This does not affect any of the discipline policies and regulations. All this bill does is require the investigation. So I just wanted to be clear on, I was trying to take a very limited approach to this bill, and the amendments do raise questions about it, being prescriptive.
Just get some more, like, a little more discussion, because again, there was, a number of questions at the hearing, just so I have a feel for the committee. Okay, we'll start with Senator August. Sure. Well, let's talk about just the underlying bill, and then I think the amendment can be part of the discussion here.
Yeah, it's just the underlying bill, and we did have conversations about this in this hearing. The problem that I have with this bill is that particularly black boys, they're just disproportionately disciplined. I mean, this is just going to lead to more of that. I mean, when you are involving administrators and principals into these sort of situations, it has been absolutely clear that they just disproportionately discipline black boys. And this, I just really believe that I understand what you're trying to do, but the unintended consequence of this is that it's going to mean more disciplinary records for young black men, which we know leads to bad outcomes. And so I just very, very strongly feel that this is just not a good pathway forward. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Senator Watson. Anybody wants to weigh in? This is a good time to do it.
Yeah, thanks for that input, Senator. I kind of looked at it a different way. You're either going to suspend or expend 2 individuals, or you're going to expel or suspend, 1. That's the bill. I don't have a problem with the bill. I've seen it many, many times. Somebody hits you, you hit them back. Both of you guys are suspended. It happens every day. But I want to talk about can I speak to the amendment?
Yeah.
Because the amendment is very interesting, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Senator Charles about this. So it looks like to me, without the amendment, it leads a lot of subjective decisions being made. What the amendment does, although it is very prescriptive, it sets a standard. But in setting that standard, it's requiring, specific training to be done, and, more of a kind of paper trail that kind of gets to, Senator Augustine's force. The piece that I don't like is when we have to deal with the excessive force. If somebody comes and shoves you and you punch them, is the punch excessive because you were only shoved? I mean, it gets to that subjectiveness. And so, to me, I would amend the amendment, to try to figure out this excessive piece, probably pull it out. I don't have a problem with, were you at the fight? All right, tell me what happened, witness statements, okay? Do we get it on video? Let's check that out. Both of you guys are involved. We talk to both of you, and then a decision gets made. I don't have a problem with that. But we need to get this one right, because it could have some unintended consequences. I'm sensitive to Senator's comments, but as a young man, we have to protect and defend ourselves. And all you got to do is hit a bully one time, and they're no longer a bully to you. They'll pick on the next weakest link. And, I got some strong feelings about this. Maybe we hold this for a period.
Okay, well, I have an idea what we might want to do here, but I'd still like to get everybody kind of weighing in here. That might help. Okay, let's go Brooks, Washington, and then Vice Chair Kagan, and then kind of get a feel for maybe how to proceed. Senator Brooks, then Senator Washington, and then Vice Chair.
Yes, and I can appreciate the intent of the senator here, but I being in a realistic world, and being in a situation where I've seen things like this play out, and it's sort of like violence begets violence, and I think when you get in a situation where it's going to be left up to person A saying person B did something to me and I retaliate, and then it keep getting blown up and more out of proportion, I should say. And here again, history will tell us who's going to be most negatively impacted by those decisions, and that's a life that's several of us can identify with, especially from where I'm sitting. So, yeah, I definitely appreciate the intent of the bill, but the outcome is probably going to be something a little less than what we want, because once we start escalating, it's going to keep escalating, and I just don't see the positive outcome from it.
Let's go to Senator Washington.
Oh, thank you. Again, I concur with the wanting to certainly ensure that survivors are a part of any equation in policy. However, two things. One, there are already rules, and I think the League of Women Voters letter points to that MSDE already has guidelines for responding to fighting. And then additionally, we just passed legislation to support restorative practices. And this is identifying, a winner and a loser, and who, without any extenuating circumstances or discussion or finding out the complete situation, is counter to what we just passed. So this, again, would reintroduce a single judgment of right and wrong. And that's my sort of position on the whole bill. And I think the amendments were offered in light of, okay, if this passes, then at least let's do this. But this, again, is not needed in that we have guidelines, and it's counter to what we've passed in the committee. Thanks.
Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak a little bit about the elephant in the room here. It's only been black senators who have spoken about their concerns, and so I want to be a white senator who is expressing my concerns, and I'd like to read one section of the bill and one section from the amendment. I have a lot of concerns about this. So on page 2 of the bill, lines 1 through 5, if a student was disciplined, blah, 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 but later determined to have used reasonable force, blah, 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 you can expunge the documentation, you can expunge the record. If, and then there's an investigation and it was later determined, that sounds like the student has to hire a lawyer or be organized and persistent and all that. I don't know whether we can count on all students, parents, or guardians having resources or having the fortitude or time to pursue that, and so that worries me. And then in the amendment on page 2, section C, school employees shall monitor any student involved in a fight, blah, 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 to prevent continued conflict. Oh my God, does that look like guilty until proven innocent? I'm watching you, kid. I'm gonna like stalk you in the hall, and I'm gonna monitor your behavior with other students and stuff. Don't like that either. I think this, and I associate with myself with Senator Washington, what you just said about restorative justice, Senator Augustine about the data, which has been totally clear. I feel like this body has been really diligent over the years in trying to move us forward, and I worry that this would move us backwards.
Okay, Senator Carrozza, why don't you have the final word, and then I maybe have a thought on this, but why don't you?
Okay, I just want to point out that, again, that the bill does not impact student discipline policies and regulations that are already in place. That all the bill does is requires investigation. And if we don't take some form of action, and I'm very open to some of the proposed language to narrow it even more, but if we don't take some action, we're doing nothing to help the victims, and that is an issue. Because right now with these school fights, when if it's the same punishment for both, because both were involved in a fight, and there was somebody that was victimized, with bullying going on, we should take some action that would protect victims. And I think that there's a way that this committee can thread that needle.
Okay, so there's two separate tracks going on here. We've got the underlying bill. Clearly some folks are not keen on the underlying. And then you've got this Charles amendment that seems to not be maybe ready for prime time, whether it's, so here's what I'll suggest. Senator Watson, Senator Carrozza, you can talk to Senator Charles, because you've not had to maybe craft some language that is meets with whatever you're trying to achieve. The underlying bill is clearly, it's not obvious, but I don't think it would be fair to just roll it here without at least you having the benefit of talking to Senator Charles, understanding that that doesn't mean even with an amendment that the bill's got the votes. And so I think let's hold this bill and then let's just kind of, see where we end up. I think, is anybody okay with that for now? Because there's, I get two separate tracks here, the amendment and the underlying bill. So with that, let's hold Senate Bill 783. Let's move to Senate Bill 789, Senator Mary Washington.
Senate Bill 789, Higher Education Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program Alterations. This bill expands eligibility for hunger-free campus designation by the Maryland Higher Education Commission to private institutions of higher education. However, these private institutions are prohibited from being eligible to receive grant funding under the Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program. Further, the bill increases the amount of the governor must include in the annual budget bill for the Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program to $250,000 rather than $150,000 beginning in fiscal 2027. There is one amendment offered by Senator Washington on page 41 of your packet. This amendment strikes the additional appropriation, making this cost neutral.
Okay, Senate Bill 789 is now cost neutral. Senator Washington,
Remove the amendment, and yes, and with the hope that maybe there can be additional funding, but in this context, holding on to what we have is what we can focus on. So.
okay, we've got a motion on the amendment from the sponsor. Okay, first let's take up this first amendment. Senator Augustine is the second. Okay, any discussion on just the initial amendment from Senator Washington? All in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed, that amendment carries. Now we have a sponsorship amendment on the table. Senator Augustine would like to be added. He's offering an amendment. Anybody else want to be on the bill as a co-sponsor? Okay, Senator Brooks, Senator Attar, Senator Augustine. Anybody else? Okay, and we've got a motion. Is there a second on the sponsorship amendment? Vice Chair Kagan? Okay, we have a second from Chair. All in favor of the sponsor amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, Senator Washington, Senate Bill 789 as amended is in front of us. Would you like to make a motion? Okay, Senator Washington moves the bill favorable as amended. Senator Augustine second. All in favor, Senate Bill 789 as amended. Raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Let's move to Senate Bill 813 from the Howard County Senators. Stacy.
Senate Bill 813, Howard Community College Board of Trustees Meetings and Contracts Alterations. This bill adds 2 additional members to the Board of Community College Trustees for Howard County and requires the Howard County Senate delegation, instead of the governor, to appoint members to the board with the advice and consent of the Senate. The board must include an opportunity for public comment at each meeting and must record and post online in a specified manner. Every 2 years, board members must undergo training on the purpose of a board of trustees. The board must survey employee satisfaction annually via specified means. The bill specifies requirements for contract renewal of the Howard Community College president, including certain limitations on compensation following the termination of a contract. The bill requires the board to submit a report to the General Assembly on the status of the faculty union contract by January 1, 2026 through January 1, 2028. There are 2 amendments. One is in your packet. That's from the Howard County delegation beginning on page 42 and on the reprint on page 44. This amendment strikes the requirement that the Howard County Senate delegation appoint the Board of Community College Trustees instead of the governor. It provides that 5 of the 9 members of the board constitutes a quorum. It requires the posting of meeting recordings to the board's website within 2 business days instead of 12 hours. It alters the board member training requirements. It requires the board to redact specified information before releasing a certain survey result to the public. strikes all provisions relating to the contract of the Howard Community College president, and requires the board to submit to the MGA a report on the status of the faculty union contract until the contract has been finalized. The committee has received a local letter for these amendments to the bill. Also offered on your desk that I handed you is from Senator Hester, and this alters the method of determining a quorum.
Senator Hester, do you want to weigh in on any aspect, including the amendment that you're offering? Is it been through the Howard County Senate delegation or not yet?
Yes.
Okay. If you want to speak to the underlying bill or the amendments?
I mean, I think that there's been a lot of conversation in the past, year about this bill, and we're at a place where most parties are in agreement. And the amendment to the amendment that I'm offering today has been jointly agreed by all 3 senators, and they're talking about it in the House. I don't know what they've done yet, but basically, it was pretty prescriptive the way it was currently drafted, saying that a quorum had to be 5. But if for some reason we don't have 9, then it was like too tight. So this gives the board a little more flexibility. It has to do with the conversation that the board members had with Chair Gazzoni over the weekend. So I would move, I don't know if to move the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. I don't know how we do it.
Okay, well, we could take them up separately, but Senator, before we do that, questions? Senator Gallion has a question.
Yes, I know this is a local bill. I'm just curious because we dealt with issue with the Harford County Community College Board last year. The training requirements, and you mentioned that was changed in the amendments. Is that like a standard thing with community colleges that once they get appointed, they have to go through some kind of training that basically tells them how to do it? I would think that would be covered, like before you get appointed, you're going to check with people, make sure. I mean, I know the folks at Harford, they're vetted pretty heavily, and they can go in there and be good right away. So I'm just curious about that.
I think most boards do have some sort of training for new members, because even if you've been vetted, you may not necessarily have done the types of activities that a member of a board on this type of entity would have to do. It also puts everybody on the same footing, make sure you understand, the lines of communication and shared responsibilities.
So what does the amendment change? Because originally it said like 2 years. Does it drop that or something?
Hold on, let me pull it up. 44 is the reprint. Okay. So with regard to the training, it says, as part of the ongoing training for the board members in at least every 2 years, the board member shall undergo training specific to board governance, structure, responsibilities, and roles. So it was just a slight rewording.
Oh, okay.
The way they had it. But it's insistent that it has to happen at least every 2 years. So each member would be likely to have training twice during their term.
Okay, any additional questions on let's focus to the extent you indicated that your amendment has been approved by I think we can take one vote on these local Howard County Senator amendments. Are there questions? Did you? Yeah, Vice Chair Kagan.
Maryland Association of Community Colleges thought this bill was prescriptive. Senator Gallion talked about Harford County. Is it similar to what we've seen elsewhere? Is it more extreme? Or do we know? I know it's in the prerogative of the committee, but I just thought I'd ask.
I believe some of the parts that have been crossed out, especially around the contract, were overly prescriptive, yes.
Okay, so maybe they'll be less unhappy, even if they're not happy. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Would you like to move the 2 amendments, both approved by the Howard County delegation? Okay, second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of the local Howard County amendments, Senate delegation amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, those amendments carry. We now have 813 as amended in front of us. Okay, Senator Hester moves the bill as amended, second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of Senate Bill 813 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Let's go to Stacy, back to you, Stacy. Senate Bill 845 from Senator Edelman.
Senate Bill 845, Local Education Agencies, Educator Screening, the NASDAQ Clearing House, School Personnel Vetting and Hiring Transparency Act. This bill requires each local school system in Maryland to become an associate member of the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification, or NASTEC, and use its educator identification clearinghouse to screen all current and prospective educators beginning July 1, 2025. There is one amendment offered from the sponsor, Senator Heddleman, on page 47. This amendment requires the department to register each LEA in the state as an associate member of NASDAQ and pay applicable fees and dues. An LEA is required to utilize the clearinghouse to screen each individual who applies for educator position on or after July 1, 2025. The committee should note that I had a conversation that apparently LEAs already have access to this clearinghouse and they do use it. So there's some confusion as to what part of the hiring process it's get used in. So it's up to the committee to decide whether you want to put it in statute.
Maybe press the question. You have a question on this specific issue that Stacy just read?
Well, that last thing threw me, Stacy. So I had asked during the hearing of Senator Heddleman whether, rather than 24 jurisdictions writing a check and being mandated to write a check, whether the State Department could cover it and just now you're all members. And she got back and said yes, and that it would be less than $23,000 a year for the whole state, for all 24 jurisdictions, which seems like pretty good bargain basement. The other thing I got is that Virginia has mandated for all counties, and similarly, the state pays for it, and all counties are covered. Now, what Stacy just said is they've already got access. Does that mean the
Meaning
state
they
is
can
already
go
paying?
in there and vet employees through this clearinghouse already.
So without anyone paying anything? Wouldn't be required.
Right, I mean,
This would be prescriptive in that, yes, they would have to do this, but. Yeah, it's a mandate.
And it's this service as opposed to
Right,
any
and it's
other
a
service.
mandate on the state to pay for it, and it's a mandate that they use this. It doesn't say when, I think, during the process, but it does require them to use it, yes.
Yeah. Senator Augustine.
So MABE was against this. And does the amendment change it so that they would not be against it because of what you, or do you think?
Let's see here. Oh. Mary Pat Fannin is
Hey, Mary Pat,
here.
you want to come up here and clarify? You heard the question from Senator Augustine. You just happened to be here.
So right now, there's a portal that MSDE manages. It's called the Teach Portal. And it's run by a vendor, and part of the data that they pull in is from this clearinghouse, this NASDAQ. So my folks said to me, we do this already. And so MSDE pays, I guess, this state fee. And so, but I have heard too that some of the LEAs have purchased it on their own, just because they do. It's only $500 apparently. So anyway, that's the information. I don't know if MABE would pull their opposition or not, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear. I didn't want something in statute that we already do as a process of our HR hiring, so.
Any other questions for Mary Pat? Yeah.
Mary Pat, are there competitors, or is this like the gold standard in terms of if we put this into our law books? Is that it for the next 100 years?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that answer. I will say that it is the one that rises when you Google. And when I did ask the HR folks to give me a list of all the things that they do, I mean, it came up repeatedly as now it is for licensure issues, right? It's not for background checks and criminal checks. It's just if in another state or in another district, someone had a question about your license, it's a self-reported. And, so you are, or it's not self-reported, I should say, it's reported, and but it's your due diligence. So if we have someone that comes from Minnesota, we would check the database and say, yes, Minnesota had a complaint against this person, and then you have to do a little bit more digging into whether it was founded or not.
Senator Gallion has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it sounds like this is a tool that's already available. my question is, you say some counties aren't doing this, but are they aware of this availability?
They are doing it. They're doing it without even knowing. They're going to the MSDE Teach portal. They just don't know that the back end is pulling data in from this NASDAQ clearinghouse.
So is that something through like a letter or something, or a notification that they could be made aware of? That you really wouldn't need legislation to get everybody on the same page here?
Yes. I mean, our folks are, anytime there's a licensure, they're checking to make sure the license is valid, and they use that Teach portal, which pulls in data from this clearinghouse.
Okay, Senator Hester?
I was just trying to remember the testimony on this. I mean, didn't Senator Hedelman say that this had slipped through the cracks in her instance? And if so, if what you're saying is true, how did this slip through?
I'm not sure how accurate the whole story, that particular story is. I mean, I'm not going to.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was not the, it wasn't the clearinghouse's fault that person got through. They had actually faked their credentials. So it was not something that would have been picked up.
Okay, well, why don't this, guys, let's just hold this. Let's let this percolate. Let's kind of maybe find
And I'll
out
talk to
a
the
little bit
senator.
more before we do anything. Okay, let's go next to Senator Hester's bill, Senate Bill 867. Devin?
Senate Bill 867, Cyber Maryland Program Revisions. As introduced, the bill transfers the Cyber Maryland program, including the Cyber Maryland Fund and the Cyber Maryland Board, from TEDCO to the Maryland Department of Labor. The bill also repeals mandated funding for talent pipeline management and an additional discretionary authorization, expands the program's required activities, authorizes a fiscal 2026 discretionary appropriation of $3 million for the new grants that the funds, that $3 million is already in the governor's budget, requires the governor to include an additional appropriation beginning in fiscal 2027, requires the unspent balances of programs to be transferred to the Cyber Maryland Fund annually, authorizes additional uses for the fund, and adjusts the composition of the board. This bill is substantially similar to Senate Bill 241, the departmental bill that you heard in February. There are amendments offered by Senator Hester that begin on page 48 of your packet. The amendments authorize other organizations to be eligible for the fund. They clarify that uses of the fund must be approved by the board. They require collaboration with specified entities rather than awarding those entities funds, as was in the original bill, and add cybersecurity clinics as recipients of the fund. Important to note that the requirements and authorizations of the bill are mays, not shalls.
Okay, Senator Hester, just, back up, just focus on the amendments here, what exactly they do. You want to add anything to what Devin, how he described?
So of importance is that everything is a may and not a shall in terms of the finances. There currently is the money in the government's budget. We worked carefully with TEDCO and Labor, and so the amendments are a consensus of Labor, TEDCO, and our office and the Cyber Maryland Board members themselves. It brings, more specificity, but not too much specificity, to the bill that was introduced by the Secretary of Labor, which is very similar.
Okay, any questions for Senator Hester?
Where does it say the may?
So if it is on page 5 of the bill, I believe.
It's in the bill?
May include in the annual budget bill an appropriation of $3 million. May include in the annual, this was struck. May
What
include.
what page are you looking at?
So I'm looking, apologies, I'm looking off of a reprint that has some of the additional amendments to it. On the actual bill, so page 5 of the bill, line 5, fiscal year 26, the governor may include in the annual budget, and then the talent pipeline piece is stricken, so may include in the annual
Yeah, but then
budget
it
for the awarding.
says shall include in the annual budget bill a portion appropriation sufficient to run the program. So that's not a may, that's a shall.
That is correct.
I'm just saying.
Requires some kind of technical fix?
Yeah, I can make a technical amendment to make sure that that becomes a may as well. I think that was just missed.
Okay, well, you'll take a double look, make sure that every reference to is a may. Good catch, Senator Augustine. Okay, any additional questions, comments? Okay, move the amendment. Senator Hester moves the amendment with those technical consent amendments that are going to be corrected technically. Second from Senator Augustine. Okay, all in favor of that Hester amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? Yes.
That technical, I'd like to co-sponsor now.
Okay. Okay with that? Okay, so that amendment carries. Who else would like to be on this bill? Would you like to be on the bill? Senator Simon Ayer?
Yeah, I mean, with the may.
Yeah,
You had a
okay.
shall before.
In fact, I'm going to go on this one, because, it's a may.
Now
Okay,
it's a may.
Feldman, Brooks, Carosa, Washington, Tar, Watson, Augustine.
Yeah.
You got all that?
Yeah.
Kagan?
Other than Senator Gallion, correct?
It says may.
Yeah.
The Augustine catch resulted in a total committee love fest here on the sponsor line. Okay, everybody's on there. Okay, now we've got the bill as amended in front of us. Senator Hester, would you like to move the bill as amended? Correct. Senate Bill 867 is amended. Favorable from Senator Hester, sponsor. Second, Senator Augustine, second. All in favor. Senate Bill 867 as amended. Raise your hand with everybody on the bill. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's go to a Carroll County local bill. And we're going to go to you, Stacy.
Senate Bill 885, Carroll County Board of Education Vacancy Procedures Alterations. This bill repeals the existing authority of the governor to appoint a new voting member to fill any vacancy on the Carroll County Board of Education. Instead, when a vacancy occurs 30 days or less before the candidate filing deadline for the primary election held in the second year of a vacating member's term, the Carroll County Commissioners must appoint a qualified individual to fill the vacancy for the remainder of the term until a successor is elected and qualifies. When a vacancy occurs 31 days or more before the candidate filing deadline for the primary election held in the second year of the vacating member's term, the county commissioners still must fill the vacancy, but only until an individual is elected and qualifies at the next general election. The elected individual must fill the vacancy on the board for the remainder of the term until a successor is elected and qualifies. There are no amendments. The committee received a local letter.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank Stacy. I spent more time on this bill than you can imagine, and I talked to Senator Reedy over the weekend, and I struggled. So first off, he said that he modeled this bill after SB2, our legislative special elections bill, and tried to use that. The problem that I had with it was the partisan, and I'm not saying red, it could be blue or purple, but partisan commissioners appointing to the nonpartisan Board of Education. And I didn't like that. So I talked to Mabe, I talked to Senator Reedy, I talked to a whole bunch of folks and collected how all the other jurisdictions fill their vacancies if someone dies or resigns or something. Ultimately, Howard and Montgomery, the senator from District 9, would be pleased to know, actually do nonpartisan to nonpartisan in a way that I think makes sense. And frankly, I think Senator Reedy joins me in thinking that it makes sense. But this is one of those perfect is the enemy of the good. So what I discussed with the good senator was this local bill should pass this year unmolested, but I think next year this committee should take a look at partisan, nonpartisan sort of conflagrations to try to keep them a little clearer and separate. So I move the bill without amendments, move it clean as is, even though I don't like it.
Okay, Senate Bill 885 clean, moved by Vice Chair Kagan, second from Senator Augustine. Any discussion on the local Carroll County Senator bill? Okay, all in favor of Senate Bill 885 clean, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Senate Bill 891, Senator Mary Washington.
Senate Bill 891, Land Use and Real Property Accessory Dwelling Units, Requirements and Prohibitions. This bill establishes a state policy to promote and encourage the creation of accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, on land zoned for single-family residential use to meet housing needs. Bill also, 1, requires adoption of local laws authorizing ADUs on land zoned for single-family residential use. 2, establishes requirements and prohibitions relating to ADU approval, imposition of development impact fees and building excise taxes on ADUs and water or sewage connections for ADUs. 3, prohibits a restriction on use of a property from unreasonably limiting the ability of an owner to develop an ADU. And 4, authorizes homeowners associations, or HOAs, to treat an ADU as a separate lot for purposes of voting and assessments. There are amendments in your voting packet. The amendments start on page 52. The reprint starts on page 56 from the bill sponsor, Senator Washington. The amendments are fairly extensive. They alter the definitions of accessory dwelling unit and dwelling unit under the bill, narrow the scope of the bill to apply to the development of ADUs on land with a single-family dwelling unit as the primary dwelling unit rather than all land zoned for single-family residential use. Authorize local jurisdictions to adopt local laws establishing safety standards for ADUs or prohibiting the conversion of accessory structures as ADUs if the only vehicular access to the accessory structure is from an alley. Strike requirements for local ADU laws and instead just require such laws to provide for construction of ADUs that meet public health, safety, and welfare standards, including relevant building codes and adequate public facilities provisions, which is new, and exclude the development of an ADU from the calculation of density and the application of certain measures limiting residential growth. That was a provision that was already in the bill. Strikes restrictions on local ADU laws and retains only the prohibition on 1, establishing setback requirements that exceed existing accessory structure setback requirements, and 2, setting conditions for approval of a zoning use permit for an ADU based on subjective criteria. Provides for the tolling of a 90-day approval requirement in the bill if the applicant fails to provide specified documentation or respond to specified information request. Alters development impact fee and building excise tax provisions to provide for the fee to be set at an amount that is consistent with existing impact fees and excise taxes. Alters provisions regarding water and sewer connections. Prohibits unreasonable limitations on the ability of a property owner to offer an ADU for rent.
Okay, we've got, I think, some questions. We're going to start, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by really giving props to Senator Washington for her work on this issue. This is part of the solution to our housing challenges, and a lot of local jurisdictions, I think, are moving forward with this. And obviously, from the bill and the amendment, you've obviously put a lot of your time, blood, sweat, and tears, and all that. Having said that, Mr. Chair, I wonder if we can hold the bill just a couple of days. MACO and MML both had concerns about this, and they're in active conversation with the House sponsor. And so the hope is that there can be a kumbaya, so that rather than going back and forth in the final days, or having conference committees, that if it can be figured out and we do it the same way, or consider doing it the same way, that might be smoother sailing. So for your consideration.
Okay, Senator Washington.
I would ask us to not consider that, in that our amendments take almost in their entirety all of from MACO, and they're comprehensive. And at the moment, the amendments that the House have are a little more piecemeal. And so I think our bill is actually what they will end up doing. As of checking in this morning with MACO, they didn't have an opposition, so I'm just wondering.
They're here, so.
And a couple days is a lot.
Do you mind, Senator Washington? I just bring Dom up here just so we get the real time, up to the minute, second perspective. We're not doing another bill hearing here, but if you could just give us a little, and Angelica is MML. Yeah, just come on up and just give us a little, you just heard Senator Washington, and we just give us a little information, not again, not another bill hearing, just some information.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. Dom from Mako for the record. So we did just get the amendments this morning, and so there is a significant amount of variance between the House and the Senate version right now. The House version we actually think is coming together pretty nicely. The Senate version, we're still kind of picking through those. I will say a number of the amendments that we did share did not make it over to the Senate amendments. So we're not sure if there was a miscommunication or what, but I mean, we are working through that very quickly.
Senator Washington? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Angelica Bailey Thupari for MML. Me too.
Apologies. Senator Washington? Yeah.
So this stakeholder has participated in all of the meetings. And amendments that were consistent with the intent of the ADU of moving it forward were accepted. Those that sought to reduce any progress on this and to allow for locals to continue to block what individuals can do on their own private property were not accepted. Not 2 days, but definitely 1 day. But I will say that the amendments that we reviewed are not consistent. And also that, yeah, I think I'll just stick to that we will not going to accept amendments that reduce it. Yeah, restricting it to just single. I mean, it has been pared down. Members, this has been pared down a lot. And if you will replay the testimony and what they asked to do, it is in this bill, particularly what Frederick wanted to do, it is in these amendments. Yeah, that's where I'm going to go. And I would ask us to, if we receive other amendments, frankly, to resist those. And I'll talk to my bill sponsor to make sure that we're the same. But I don't think we should just allow one stakeholder to hold up the work that many, many other stakeholders have worked on over the last year.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's holding up. We just want to make sure that everybody's, got all the information they need. It is a long amendment. I mean, it took.
Giving them everything they want except,
Okay. Senator Gallion.
Yeah, for clarifications, we have the bill sponsor and two people opposed. I know the realtors are for it. And this is something really I should have probably brought up and asked about in the bill hearing, but where are we septic? I understand the need for more ADUs. Where does so you have potentially more people on a property, especially in an area on well and septic, where do those considerations come in for more pressure on these septic systems?
Very specifically where they're being allowed. And again, I'm not calling it a pilot, but in a way it's to allow it. There has to be existing, a sewer. It's on a private, it's on, single dwelling. So not the kind of multi-unit buildings that were considered. It's allowing, which wasn't in the original bill, for locals to make laws and implementing the bill. Again, the idea, so it's not, so it's actually really expanding a lot of what we allow them to do, but we have to be able to explore it. And essentially, this is on private property.
Does it limit how many people, if it's an ADU, is that supposed to be just for one or two people normally because it's a smaller area, or can you?
I would say think of it more as the way the bill's currently drafted. Think of it as you have a carriage house on your property, or what they used to call, mother-in-law suites above your garage and that. So as the bill is currently drafted, it's not really allowing for new construction or any of that, which is what some want. It is allowing for there to be some criteria, some statewide kind of standards around if we're going to regulate and make sure the ADUs are safe, which is, what we know. And then also allow people, like we heard the testimony of a woman who, unless she's able to do this, won't be able to afford, to have somebody live in with her, because some jurisdictions say unrelated people can't live together. There are all these sort of, restrictions, and this is just allowing for there to be some minimum criteria set across the state that can begin to create a framework for allowing these units to exist.
Okay, let's get Senator Augustine. You wanna-
What I would say is, and I've said this before in here, I mean, in my area, we have overcrowding, and we've got problems with folks creating their own, like, ADUs where they shouldn't. And I know that's not what you're doing here, but I'm just expressing that the state is diverse and has different issues and things that are going on across it. That's my situation. But what I would ask of you, though, is so that I can understand that what your bill is doing is not that, would be a plain language, because this is a lot, plain language sort of explainer of what this would be with these amendments would just be very, very helpful, Senator. Thank you.
Also, is Delegate Stewart, I mean, also I'd be curious, you and Vaughn Stewart, are you aligned, or are you, it's suggesting here that the House is in a different place?
Just honest, there's been a back and forth. Oh, these are okay over here, and then over here, and there's
well,
seems to be an effort to create a conflict,
Okay,
and
was
so
part,
we're going to take care of
back to
it.
Senator Augustine, but also, can you, why don't you connect with Vaughn Stewart a little bit so we can,
We talk every day.
Okay.
That's why I'm a little frustrated right now. There's different messages.
well,
going
but
on
then,
all sides.
for the committee, it's a little, you can
I'm
understand,
just
so-
expressing to you, the expectation is that what's being presented to you here is not necessarily how things are.
Okay, well, maybe
So I
some
will
more plain
check it
language
out.
and
Yep.
so everybody knows what we're, okay, let's hold this and try to work on that a little bit, which brings us to our final bill of the day, Senate Bill 946, Senator Carrozza, April.
Senate Bill 946, Endangered and Threatened Species, Incidental Taking, Bats. This bill authorizes the Secretary of Natural Resources to issue a permit that authorizes an incidental taking of the Indiana bat, the northern long-eared bat, or the tricolor bat if an applicant submits a conservation plan and the Secretary makes certain findings. There are amendments on page 68 of your voting packet. These were the amendments suggested by the Department of Natural Resources. The amendments would add the eastern small-footed bat, which is an endangered species listed under state law but not federal law, to the bill, and would also correct the name of the tricolored bat rather than the tricolor bat.
Okay, so Carrozza, what do you think of those amendments?
I would move the amendments. Second.
Okay, we got a favorable on the amendments from Senator Carrozza, sponsor, second from Senator Augustine. Discussion about the bat amendments. Okay, all in
That's
Bat.
not bad.
Bat, said that.
Amendments.
Okay. All in favor of those amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendments carry. Senate Bill 946 as amended is before us. Senator Carrozza?
I would like to move Senate Bill 946 as amended.
Okay, if a sponsor moves the bill, a second from Senator Gallion. Was it Senator Gallion is the second? Okay, discussion. All in favor, Senate Bill 946 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed? That bill carries. We passed 17 bills in this session, and that concludes our work for today. Just a reminder, you do have the 1 o'clock briefing, and then, let's hold the possibility of some more voting, but no guarantee. We did do some all holds, but let's, we'll keep our powder dry, okay? So with that, the meeting's hereby adjourned.